Tales of werewolf-type creatures have entertained and terrified humans for thousands of years, I among them, but I wonder if it's time we should stop and just take a moment to ponder, what is a werewolf anyway? We'll take a listen to this spine-chilling encounter which comes from the book Werewolves by Elliot O'Donnell, and here he retells an account from a Miss St. Denis from northwest Wales.
Miss St. Denis told me she was once staying on a farm, though some distance from the village, was not far off the railway station. A very diminutive affair, with only one platform and a mere box that served as a waiting room and booking office combined. It was, moreover, one of those stations where the separate duties of station master, porter, booking clerk and ticket collector are performed by the one and the same person, and where the signal always appears to be down. As the platform commanded the only paintable view in the neighbourhood, Miss St. Denis often used to resort there with her sketchbook. On one occasion, she had stayed rather later than usual, and on rising hurriedly from her camping stool, saw, to her surprise, a figure which she took to be that of a man sitting on a truck a few yards distant, peering at her. Now, I say to her surprise because, excepting on the rare occasion of a train arriving, she had never seen anyone at the station besides the station master, and in the evening the platform was invariably deserted. The loneliness of the place was for the first time brought forcibly home to her. The station master's tiny house was at least some 100 yards away, and beyond that there was not another habitation nearer than the farm. On all sides of her too were black frowning precipices, full of seams and fissures and inequalities, showing vague and shadowy in the fading rays of the sun. Here and there were the huge, gaping mouths of gloomy slate quarries that had long been disused and were now half full of foul water. Around them the earth was heaped with loose fragments of rock, which had evidently been detached from the principal mass and shivered to pieces in the fall. A few trees, among which were the black walnut, the slippery elm, and here and there an oak, grew among the rocks, and attested by their dwarfish stature the ungrateful soil in which they had taken root. It was not an exhilarating scene, but it was one that had a peculiar fascination for Miss St. Denis, a fascination she could not explain, and which she now began to regret. The darkness had come on very rapidly, and was especially concentrated, so it seemed to her, round the spot where she sat, and she could make nothing out of the silent figure on the truck, save that it had unpleasantly bright eyes, and there was something queer about it. She coughed to see if that would have any effect, and as it had none, she coughed again. Then she spoke and said, "Can you tell me the time, please?" But there was no reply, and the figure still sat there, staring at her. Then she grew uneasy, and packing up her things, walked out of the station, trying her best to look as if nothing had occurred. She glanced over her shoulder. The figure was following her. Quickening her pace, she assumed a jaunty air and whistled, and turning round again, saw the strange figure still coming after her. The road would soon be at its worst stage of loneliness, and owing to the cliffs on either side of it, almost pitch dark. Indeed, the spot positively invited murder, and she might shriek herself hoarse without the remotest chance of making herself heard, To go on with this figure so unmistakably and persistently stalking her was out of the question. Screwing up courage, she swung round and, raising herself to her full height, cried, "What do you want? How dare you?" She got no further, for a sudden spurt of dying sunlight playing over the figure showed her it was nothing human, nothing she had ever conceived possible. It was a nude grey thing, not unlike a man in body, but with a wolf's head. As it sprang forward, its light eyes ablaze with ferocity, she instinctively felt in her pocket, whipped out a pocket flashlight and pressed the button. The effect was magical. The creature shrank back and, putting two paw-like hands in front of its face to protect its eyes, faded into nothingness. She subsequently made inquiries, but could learn nothing beyond the fact that in one of the quarries, close to the place where the phantasm had vanished, some curious bones, partly human and partly animal, had been unearthed, and that the locality was always shunned after dusk.
Well, Miss St. Denis sure was a feisty woman. I like that. Now, I wonder what might have happened had Miss St. Denis not pulled out that flashlight. The sudden light at least surprised the creature, if not frightened it, and she made good her escape, and we're only left to wonder what the creature wanted. Was it simply trying to drive her away, or did it wish to cause her harm? Or was it far more complicated than that?
Here is an account narrated to me some summers ago by a Mr. Warren, who at the time he saw the phenomenon was staying in the Hebrides, which part of the British Isles is probably richer than any other in spooks of all sorts. "I was about 15 years of age at the time," Mr. Warren said, "and had for several years been residing with my grandfather, who was an elder in the Kirk of Scotland. He was much interested in geology and literally filled the house with fossils from the pits and caves round where we dwelt. One morning he came home in a great state of excitement and made me go with him to look at some ancient remains he had found at the bottom of a dried up tarn. "Look," he cried, bending down and pointing at them. "Here is a human skeleton with a wolf's head. What do you make of it?" I told him I did not know, but supposed it must be some kind of monstrosity. "It's a werewolf," he rejoined. "That's what it is, a werewolf. This island was once overrun with satyrs and werewolves. Help me carry it to the house." I did as he bid me, and we placed it on the table in the back kitchen. That evening I was left alone in the house, my grandfather and the other members of the household having gone to the kirk. For some time I amused myself reading, and then, fancying I heard a noise in the back premises, I went into the kitchen. There was no one about, and becoming convinced that it could only have been a rat that had disturbed me, I sat on the table alongside the alleged remains of the werewolf and waited to see if the noises would recommence. I was thus waiting in a listless sort of way, my back bent, my elbows on my knees, looking at the floor and thinking of nothing in particular, when there came a loud rat-tat-tat of knuckles on the window pane. I immediately turned in the direction of the noise and encountered to my alarm a dark face looking in at me. At first dim and indistinct, it became more and more complete, until it developed into a perfectly defined head of a wolf terminating in the neck of a human being. Though greatly shocked, my first act was to look in every direction for a possible reflection, but in vain. There was no light either without or within, other than that from the setting sun. nothing that could in any way have produced an illusion. I looked at the face and marked each feature intently. It was unmistakably a wolf's face. The jaws slightly distended, the lips wreathed in a savage snarl, the teeth sharp and white, the eyes light green, the ears pointed. The expression of the face was diabolically malignant, and as it gazed straight at me, my horror was as intense as my wonder. This it seemed to notice, for a look of savage exultation crept into its eyes, and it raised one hand, a slender hand, like that of a woman, though with prodigiously long and curved fingernails, menacingly, as if about to dash in the window pane. Remembering what my grandfather had told me about evil spirits, I crossed myself. But as this had no effect, and I really feared the thing would get at me, I ran out of the kitchen and shut and locked the door, remaining in the hall till the family returned. My grandfather was much upset when I told him what had happened, and attributed my failure to make the spirit depart to my want of faith. Had he been there, he assured me, he would soon have got rid of it. But he nevertheless made me help him remove the bones from the kitchen, and we reinterred them in the very spot where we had found them, and where, for aught I know to the contrary, they still lie.
Well, there is a suggestion there that the figure which appeared at the window was a spirit of some sort, but I'm not so sure. The sign of the cross, of course, had no effect at all, and it appears that once the bones were returned to their resting place, there were no more sightings or activity from the mysterious creatures. Well, could this have been a creature of the other world? We can't really get a full physical description from those two accounts. They offer glimpses of the creature's appearance, which we naturally put together and come up with werewolf, but if we keep an open mind, we realise that we don't really know. They were wolf-like, and they were human-like. They had shared characteristics. Were they humans who shape-shifted into a werewolf? Or could they have been a creature entirely independent of humans? Do you think the label of werewolf is tossed around too freely? Is it time for us to rethink our perception of werewolves? Until next time, remember, keep your eyes and ears open and be kind. Cheerio!